Hi, welcome back to the channel. One tiny coin can be worth $1.3 million, and it's not the only one. Today, we're counting down the top 14 most valuable coins that can truly change your life, with values so high they'll leave you speechless. Let's moving on. First up, the 1813 Holy Dollar and Dump is valued today at an astonishing $300,000 in high-grade condition, making it the single most valuable coin pair in Australian numismatics. Its worth is not simply tied to its rarity, but also to its extraordinary historical significance. Back in the early 19th century, the colony of New South Wales suffered from a chronic shortage of currency, which crippled trade and economic growth. To solve this crisis, Governor Lachlan Macquarie devised a bold and unprecedented idea, importing 40,000 Spanish silver dollars and physically altering them. By cutting out the central portion of each coin, he created two separate pieces of currency. The larger outer ring became known as the Holy Dollar, while the small centerpiece became the Dump. Both coins were counter-stamped with the words New South Wales and dated 1813, instantly making them official government-issued money. This ingenious move effectively doubled the number of coins in circulation and made them undesirable for export, since no merchant outside of Australia wanted mutilated coinage. The Holy Dollar and Dump were born out of necessity, but over time they transformed into legendary artifacts. Each surviving piece carries the dual identity of being a Spanish coin from the empire's vast reach and an Australian colonial creation. Today, only around 300 Holy Dollars and 1,000 Dumps are known to survive, with the majority locked away in museum collections. The rarity of these coins in private hands fuels their desirability, and collectors consider them the ultimate prize. The beauty of the Holy Dollar and Dump lies not only in their scarcity, but also in the stories they carry. Each Holy Dollar retains part of its original Spanish design, while its Australian countermark stamps history directly onto it. Every coin is different, depending on which mint the original Spanish dollar came from, and these variations keep collectors endlessly fascinated. When one appears at auction, it becomes a media event, with international attention focused on Australia's earliest official currency. High-grade examples are almost never seen outside of major auctions, and when they do appear, they command prices that dwarf most other collectible coins. Collectors from around the world compete fiercely, driving values to record-breaking levels. In fact, the Holy Dollar has achieved hammer prices of more than $1.3 million in recent years, and dumps in pristine condition have realized six-figure sales as well. This makes them not just coins, but treasures of national heritage. The 1813 Holy Dollar and Dump, valued at $1,300,000, remain the crown jewels of Australian numismatics, forever linking necessity, ingenuity, and history into one of the greatest currency stories ever told. Next up, the 1930 penny holds a current, high-grade market value of around $150,000, making it the most famous copper coin in Australia and one of the rarest in the world. Unlike the deliberate creation of the Holy Dollar, the 1930 penny is surrounded by mystery. During the Great Depression, official records suggest that no pennies were struck for circulation in 1930, yet somehow a tiny number of them were released into the hands of the public. Most experts believe that these coins were produced accidentally, possibly as test strikes or through the use of leftover dies at the Melbourne Mint. Regardless of how they came into existence, they quickly became legendary. The 1930 penny is the coin that every Australian has heard of. Even those who are not collectors, its fame spread during the 1940s when people began to notice unusual 1930 dated pennies turning up in circulation. Stories of lucky finds circulated widely, with families treasuring them as heirlooms. Estimates suggest that fewer than 1,500 were ever struck, and only a fraction of those survive today in collectible condition. This tiny surviving population has elevated the coin to mythic status. Collectors refer to it as the King of Australian Coins. It is not merely a piece of copper, but a symbol of resilience. during one of the harshest economic periods in the country's history. The Great Depression was a time of hardship, unemployment and uncertainty, and the 1930 penny stands as a small but powerful reminder of that era. Its scarcity has ensured that demand has always exceeded supply, which explains why prices have risen consistently for decades. At auction, the 1930 penny is guaranteed to generate excitement. Even well-worn examples regularly bring in six-figure sums, but it is the top-quality specimens that break records. Collectors from across the world participate in bidding wars whenever one comes to market, driving the price higher with each sale. Investors also see it as a safe store of value, as its fame and desirability ensure long-term appreciation. In recent years, Amir Trita penny in top condition sold for over $150,000, placing it among the most expensive copper coins globally. This enduring demand shows no sign of slowing, as each passing decade cements its reputation further. The 1930 penny, valued at $150,000 in high grade, is more than just money. It is a national treasure, a cultural icon, and the ultimate dream for any coin collector in Australia. Next up, the 1920 Sydney Sovereign in high-grade condition carries a breathtaking market value of around $450,000, making it one of the most valuable and elusive gold coins in all of Australian numismatics. What makes this coin so extraordinary is that it was produced at a time when the once prolific Sydney Mint was nearing the end of its coinage history. The Sovereign itself, a gold coin that had become a global standard for trade and investment across the British Empire, was already a symbol of economic power. Yet the 1920 Sydney Sovereign has transcended its role as a piece of circulating currency to become an almost mythical rarity. To understand why, we need to look at the historical background. Gold sovereigns had been struck in Australia since the mid-19th century, with mints established in Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth to refine and coin the abundant gold discovered in the colonies. The Sydney Mint, in particular, had a proud tradition dating back to 1855, but by the early 20th century its days were numbered. By 1920, very few sovereigns were produced there, and records are inconsistent. Some experts even believe the 1920 Sydney Sovereign might not have been intended for circulation at all, but rather produced in minuscule numbers as a trial, an error, or a special issue. What is known for certain is that examples of this coin are almost non-existent. Only a handful of genuine specimens are confirmed, making it rarer than even the famed 1930 penny. Many collectors have chased it, but few have ever seen one in person, let alone owned one. Its rarity has led to high levels of scrutiny and authentication, as counterfeits have appeared over the years. Professional grading services treat each example with the utmost seriousness, and provenance is critical. When one does appear at auction, it causes immediate excitement among collectors and investors alike. Because of its scarcity, there are far more people who want it than there are coins available, which drives values sky high. The design itself remains classic, featuring King George V on the obverse and Benedetto Pistrucci's timeless depiction of St. George slaying the dragon on the reverse, a design that has endured as one of the most iconic images in coinage history. Yet it is not the design but the date and mint mark that create the frenzy. A sovereign from Sydney dated 1920 is like lightning in a bottle, a numismatic miracle that few will ever own. Over the years, sales of the 1920 Sydney Sovereign in the best condition have reached as high as 450 Rura. The combination of beauty, historical significance, and rarity ensures that it will always hold a revered place in the hearts of collectors. As time passes and more collectors compete for the few remaining pieces, the value can only be expected to rise further. Today, the 1920 Sydney Sovereign, valued at $450,000, stands as one of the most exclusive treasures in Australian coinage, a gleaming golden relic that embodies rarity, prestige, and the enduring allure of the sovereign. Next up, the 1923 halfpenny holds a current high grade, market value of about 320,000, making it the rarest copper halfpenny ever produced in Australia, and one of the country's most sought-after coins. What makes this piece so remarkable is not just its value, but its story, a tale of scarcity, oversight, and survival that has fascinated collectors for nearly a century. At first glance, a halfpenny may seem insignificant compared to majestic gold sovereigns, but the 1923 halfpenny proves that even the smallest coins can achieve legendary status. The origins of its rarity lie in the chaotic conditions of the early 1920s. After World War I, the Australian economy was struggling, and the demand for new coinage was inconsistent. In 1923, it appears that only a very small number of halfpennies were struck at the Sydney Mint, possibly as few as 15,000, and there is evidence to suggest that even fewer were ever actually released into circulation. This incredibly low mintage immediately set the stage for rarity. Unlike the 1930 penny, which gained fame later in the 20th century, the 1923 halfpenny was recognized as a rarity relatively early on, and collectors began to search for it almost as soon as it appeared. The design is familiar to Australian coinage of the era, with King George V depicted on the obverse and the words Commonwealth of Australia surrounding the denomination on the reverse. But despite its ordinary appearance, the coin's extraordinary scarcity elevates it to iconic status. Very few examples remain in top condition, as most of the small mintage entered circulation and suffered heavy wear. This makes high-grade examples especially prized, and their market value reflects that. The mystique surrounding the 1923 halfpenny has only grown over time. Many families passed down stories of discovering one by chance in pocket change, and numismatic publications have long featured it as one of the holy grails of Australian collecting. Its fame rivals that of the 1930 penny, and for copper coin specialists, it is the ultimate target. Collectors who manage to acquire one hold on to it tightly, knowing that demand will always far outstrip supply. At auction, the coin has consistently achieved extraordinary prices. Even heavily circulated examples sell for tens of thousands of dollars. But it is the pristine specimens that truly astonish. In recent years, top condition 1923 halfpennies have sold for more than 320,000, reflecting both their scarcity and their iconic reputation. For a small copper coin originally worth only a fraction of a penny, this is a remarkable transformation. Today, the 1923 halfpenny, valued at 320,000 in high grade, stands as one of the greatest treasures of Australian numismatics, a tiny piece of copper with a story as big as the nation's history itself. Next up, the 1937 Australian crown in top-grade condition carries a market value of around 90,000, making it one of the most fascinating silver issues in the nation's coinage history. This coin was introduced with much fanfare, intended to be a prestigious addition to Australia's circulating currency, yet its story is one of ambition colliding with practicality. Struck in sterling silver and weighing a hefty 28.27 grams, the crown was a coin of substance and beauty, designed to celebrate the coronation of King George VI in 1937. The idea of a crown coin carried strong historical significance, as crowns had been part of British numismatic tradition since the 16th century. For Australia, producing its own crown was a statement of maturity and pride within the Commonwealth. The design of the 1937 crown is magnificent. The obverse features the portrait of King George VI, engraved with fine detail and regal presence. The reverse showcases the royal crown, rendered with ornate precision and surrounded by the words Commonwealth of Australia and the denomination One Crown. The sheer size of the coin gave engravers the canvas to create bold, striking designs that stood out from smaller denominations. Collectors admired the coin's artistic merit immediately, and at the time of its release, it was seen as both a piece of currency and a work of art. However, the crown faced immediate challenges as a circulating coin. It was simply too large and too heavy for everyday use. In a society accustomed to pennies, shillings, and florins, the introduction of a coin weighing nearly an ounce of silver proved impractical. Shopkeepers disliked it, ordinary people found it cumbersome, and despite its beauty, it failed to integrate into daily commerce. As a result, production was short-lived, and the crown's lifespan as a circulating issue was brief. Despite its rejection by the public, the 1937 crown became an instant collectible. Its large size, silver content, and the story of its limited issue gave it enduring appeal among numismatists. Over time, surviving specimens, especially those preserved in uncirculated condition, became increasingly valuable. The coin also carries historical weight as a reminder of Australia's ties to the monarchy and the optimism of the coronation year. Collectors today prize it as much for its story as for its beauty. In the modern market, the finest examples of the 1937 crown have reached as high as $90,000, while many examples exist in circulated grades. Truly pristine pieces are rare, and it is those that command premium prices. The 1937 crown, valued at $90,000 in the highest grades, stands as a silver giant of Australian numismatics, a coin that combined ambition and artistry, but ultimately proved too grand for daily life. Next up, the 1938 Australian crown in top condition holds a market value of about $105,000, surpassing even its predecessor due to its scarcity. This coin followed directly after the ill-fated 1937 crown, but instead of becoming a staple of circulation, it became a rare one-year type that collectors revere today. The decision to strike the crown again in 1938 was likely motivated by the desire to continue the tradition and give the new coin a fair chance, but public rejection was swift and decisive. Within a single year, production ceased, leaving the 1938 crown as one of the shortest-lived series in Australia's coinage history. The design remained essentially the same as the 1937 issue. The obverse bears the portrait of King George VI, while the reverse proudly displays the royal crown, a symbol of authority and unity within the British Empire. Yet while the design was unchanged, the historical context of the 1938 issue gave it a new identity. By then, it was clear that the crown would never succeed as a practical circulating coin. The government and the public alike recognized it as a failure in commerce, and its mintage was drastically reduced compared to the previous year. This low mintage is precisely why the 1938 crown is so coveted today. Only around 101,600 crowns were minted in 1938, compared to nearly 1 million in 1937. This staggering drop in production ensured that the 1938 issue would be scarce from the very beginning. Many of the coins that did circulate were heavily used, and fewer were set aside in mint condition. As a result, collectors today face enormous challenges in finding a 1938 crown in pristine, uncirculated state. Those that do exist are considered true treasures of Australian silver coinage. The coin's failure in circulation ironically sealed its fate as a numismatic icon. Because it existed for only 1 year, the 1938 crown became a key date for collectors. Completing a crown set without it is nearly impossible, which has always pushed demand higher. For generations, Australian families have told stories of holding onto a crown as a curiosity, not realizing that the 1938 dated pieces could one day be worth fortunes. At auction, the 1938 crown has regularly outperformed expectations, with high-grade specimens reaching over $105,000 in value. The rarity of pristine coins ensures fierce competition among collectors whenever one is offered. What began as a failed attempt at introducing a large silver coin has instead become one of the crown jewels of Australian numismatics. Today, the 1938 crown, valued at $105,000 in the finest grades, stands as a symbol of scarcity, beauty, and the unpredictable way history can turn a short-lived failure into an enduring treasure. Next up, the 1966 round 50 cent, struck in 80% silver, commands a high-grade market value of around $70,000, making it one of the most fascinating modern Australian coins ever released into circulation. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary 50-cent piece, but its unique shape, silver content, and short-lived existence have elevated it to legendary status. The year 1966 was a monumental one in Australian history, marking the transition from the old pounds, shillings and pence system to decimal currency. As part of this overhaul, the government introduced a new suite of coins, including the first-ever 50-cent denomination. But what began as a well-intentioned innovation quickly turned into a costly misstep. The new coin was designed as a large, round, silver-coloured piece, bearing the Australian coat of arms on one side and a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the other. At 31.5 millimeters in diameter and weighing 13.28 grams, it was one of the largest circulating coins Australia had ever produced. More importantly, it was struck in an alloy containing 80% silver, making it extremely valuable even by bullion standards. At the time of its release, the intrinsic silver value was not far from the coin's face value, but as global silver prices began to rise in the late 1960s, the government faced a serious problem. People quickly realized that the coin's metal content was worth more than 50 cents, leading to widespread hoarding, melting, and speculation. The coin's sheer size also posed challenges in circulation. Australians found it heavy, cumbersome, and awkward to use in everyday transactions. Combined with the skyrocketing silver prices, the government had little choice but to act quickly. By 1969, the round silver 50-cent coin was withdrawn and replaced with the 12-sided, copper-nickel version we know today. This swift change transformed the 1966 round 50 cent into a one-year type and ensured its permanent rarity. Over the decades, the coin has become an icon of modern Australian numismatics. Collectors treasure it not just for its beauty, but also for the story it represents. A bold experiment that ultimately proved unsustainable. Many of the original mintage of 36.5 million coins were melted down, leaving far fewer in existence today. High-grade, uncirculated examples are particularly scarce because so many entered circulation before their withdrawal. At auction, pristine specimens with full mint luster have fetched prices as high as $70,000, reflecting both their scarcity and the enduring demand among collectors. For a coin that once jingled in the pockets of ordinary Australians, this transformation into a prized rarity is remarkable. Today, the 1966 round 50 cent, valued at $70,000 in top condition, stands as a silver giant of modern coinage, short-lived in circulation, but eternal in the hearts of collectors. Next up, the 2000 Mule $1 coin is valued at around $125,000 in the highest grades, making it one of the most famous and valuable mint-era coins ever discovered in Australia. Unlike deliberate rarities such as the Holy Dollar or the 1930 penny, this coin owes its existence to a striking mistake, an accidental pairing of mismatched dies at the Royal Australian Mint. Yet what might have been a simple blunder has become a legendary treasure that captures the imagination of collectors across the country. In the year 2000, Australia issued its standard $1 coin featuring the iconic Mob of Roost design by Stuart Devlin. However, during production, a small number of coins were struck using the obverse die intended for the 10-cent piece. This meant that the Queen's portrait side of the coin had a smaller, thicker-rimmed impression compared to the reverse, creating a dramatic and easily recognizable mule error. The term mule in numismatics refers to a coin struck with dies, not intended to be paired together, and these mistakes are among the most prized types of errors a collector can hope to find. The error was not discovered immediately. For months, these mule coins circulated quietly, spending time in wallets, purses, and cash registers like ordinary dollars. But sharp-eyed collectors eventually noticed the unusual rim and portrait, and word began to spread. The discovery caused a sensation in the numismatic community, leading people across Australia to search through their pockets and coin jars in hopes of finding one. What makes the 2000 mule particularly remarkable is the sheer rarity of its survival. Experts estimate that perhaps only a few thousand were struck, and of those, only a fraction have been identified and preserved. Most examples are found with heavy wear from circulation, but the handful of pristine, uncirculated specimens are breathtaking in both condition and value. Because it was born from error, every surviving mule is unique, with slight differences in strike strength and rim thickness, adding to their individual character. At auction, the 2000 mule has become a superstar. Even worn examples bring thousands of dollars. While high-grade coins spark fierce bidding wars, the highest prices achieved for uncirculated specimens have reached up to $125,000, placing this modern-era coin among the most valuable in the world. Its fame has spread far beyond the coin-collecting community, with stories about the mule appearing in newspapers, television programs and online forums, inspiring everyday Australians to check their change. Today, the 2000 mule $1 coin, valued at $125,000 in the finest condition, is more than just an error. It is a symbol of numismatic luck, the dream find that proves treasures can still be hiding in plain sight. For collectors, it represents the thrill of discovery, the power of rarity, and the enduring truth that sometimes mistakes make history. Next up, the 1985 1-cent coin in pristine, high-grade condition holds a market value of around $88,000, an extraordinary figure for such a small and humble copper coin. What makes this piece so remarkable is its rarity, caused not by design or intention, but by the curious circumstances of Australia's coin production during the mid-1980s. At the time, Australia was gradually phasing out its 1 and 2 cent coins, as inflation had eroded their usefulness in circulation. The cost of minting them was beginning to outweigh their face value, and public demand for them was declining sharply. By 1985, only a very limited number of 1-cent coins were struck at all, and the surviving pieces in top condition have since become prized treasures among numismatists. The design of the coin is instantly recognizable to generations of Australians. On the obverse is the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Raphael Maklouf, whose regal effigy appeared on Australian coinage throughout the 1980s. On the reverse, the tiny but iconic image of a feathertail glider, a small, nocturnal marsupial native to Australia, remains one of the most beloved animal designs in the nation's coinage history. While its size and face value were modest, this coin represented a period of transition in Australian monetary history, a time when smaller denominations were becoming obsolete. What elevates the 1985 1-cent coin to legendary status is the sheer scarcity of coins struck in that year. Exact mintage figures are debated, with some suggesting that the issue may have been largely for mint sets, rather than general circulation, and others believing that a very small number were released by accident. Whatever the case, surviving examples in uncirculated condition are vanishingly rare. Many that did circulate quickly disappeared into piggy banks, jars, or were discarded when the denomination was withdrawn from everyday use. In 1992, collectors now recognize the 1985 1-cent as a key date coin, meaning it is essential for anyone attempting to build a complete collection of Australian decimal coinage. The coin's rarity is magnified by the fact that 1-cent coins were so often overlooked. Few people ever thought to keep them in pristine condition. This makes high-grade specimens almost impossible to find today. When one appears at auction, the reaction is immediate and intense. Collectors, investors, and even casual hobbyists know they are looking at a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Prices have steadily climbed over the years, culminating in recent record sales of around $88,000 for the very finest examples. Today, the 1985 1-cent coin, valued at $88,000 in top condition, is one of the greatest small-denomination rarities in Australian coinage. Tiny copper disc with a colossal reputation. Next up, the 1986 2-cent coin in high-grade condition commands a market value of around $67,000, making it one of the most valuable small copper coins ever struck in Australia. Like the 1985 1 cent, its rarity stems not from a deliberate minting choice, but from the circumstances of a currency system in transition. By the mid-1980s, 1 and 2 cent coins were becoming increasingly redundant in everyday commerce. Inflation had eroded their purchasing power to almost nothing, and many Australians considered them a nuisance. As a result, the Royal Australian Mint struck fewer and fewer of them, and the 1986 issue became one of the rarest of all. The coin itself features one of the most iconic Australian designs. On the obverse is the Raphael Makhlouf portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, which lent a dignified and elegant look to coins of the era. On the reverse is the image of the frill-necked lizard, a reptile instantly recognizable for its dramatic defensive display. The design gave the small copper coin a distinctly Australian identity, and for many years, 2 cent coins were a familiar sight in every household, often jingling in children's pockets or saved in jars. Yet behind its ordinary appearance lies a story of extreme scarcity. Very few 2 cent coins were struck in 1986, and many of those were likely set aside for mint sets rather than general release. Circulating examples are exceptionally hard to come by, and nearly all survivors show heavy wear from use. To find an uncirculated 1986 2 cent coin today is almost impossible, which explains why collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums when one appears on the market. The coin's rarity has made it a cornerstone for collectors of decimal coinage. Completing a full set of Australian 2 cent coins is a challenge without the elusive 1986 issue, and this fact alone has pushed demand through the roof. Stories abound of people combing through old jars of coins in the hope of stumbling across one. Though the chances of such a find are slim, most surviving pieces are now in the hands of serious collectors, locked away in private collections or vaults. When these coins come to auction, they generate tremendous excitement. Even circulated examples can bring significant prices, but it is the uncirculated coins, with their bright copper-red luster intact, that fetch staggering amounts. Recent auction results have confirmed values as high as $67,000 for the best examples, cementing the coin's reputation as one of the most desirable modern Australian rarities. Today, the 1986 2 cent coin, valued at $67,000 in the highest grades, proves that even the smallest coins can hold the biggest stories, embodying scarcity, history, and the thrill of discovery. Next up, the 1953 florin in high-grade condition holds a market value of around $74,000, making it one of the most significant post-war Australian silver coins. At first glance, it may appear like any other florin of the mid-20th century, yet this coin represents not only a monetary piece, but also a historical artifact, marking a turning point in Australian coinage. The year 1953 was historic. It was the year Queen Elizabeth II was crowned, following the passing of her father, King George VI, in 1952. With her ascension to the throne, every coin minted in Australia had to reflect the new monarch, creating a wave of redesigned issues that remain highly collectible today. On the obverse of the 1953 florin is the first effigy of Queen Elizabeth II to appear on Australian coins, sculpted by Mary Gillick. This youthful portrait of the new queen became iconic, symbolizing the dawn of a new era. On the reverse, the florin retained its long-standing coat of arms design, featuring the kangaroo, emu, and shield, a proud emblem of national identity. While the design was not new, the combination of Elizabeth's debut portrait and the historic date has elevated this coin into the spotlight. The rarity of the 1953 florin lies not so much in its original mintage, millions were struck, but in the survival of examples in pristine condition. Florins were heavily used in circulation throughout the 1950s and 1960s. They were large, silver-based coins that saw daily use, which means most pieces from that year are worn, scratched, or discolored. Finding one in uncirculated condition with sharp details and full luster is exceedingly difficult, and this scarcity and high grade is what drives the coin's exceptional value. Collectors prize the 1953 florin not only for its numismatic importance, but also for its historical symbolism. It represents the first chapter of Queen Elizabeth II's remarkably long reign, a reign that spanned over 7 decades. For Australians who shared deep ties with the Crown during that period, the coin is both a monetary artifact and a cultural keepsake. Its strong connection to royal history, combined with its rarity and mint state, explains why auction houses list it among the most desirable Australian florins. Today, the market consistently values top-quality 1953 florins at around $74,000, cementing its reputation as one of the most treasured silver coins of the Elizabethan era in Australia. It is a coin where history, rarity, and artistry converge, creating a piece that collectors dream of adding to their cabinets. Next up, the 1954 florin in the highest grades commands a market value of approximately $69,000, and it is equally remarkable in its historical context. This coin marks a continuation of the early Elizabeth II era of Australian coinage, but with subtle differences that make it stand out as a prized rarity. While the 1953 issue had the distinction of being the first Elizabethan florin, the 1954 issue followed as part of the regular minting cycle, yet it has taken on a legendary status among collectors for its scarcity and top condition. The obverse once again features Mary Gillick's youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, reflecting the optimism and renewal associated with her early reign. On the reverse, the traditional Australian coat of arms design remained unchanged, maintaining continuity with previous decades of florin production. But what makes the 1954 issue so intriguing is its place in the broader story of post-war Australia. By this time, silver coinage was beginning to phase out across the world, as many nations transitioned toward cheaper base metals. Though the Australian florin remained silver until 1963, the coins of the 1950s were among the last to truly carry the weight and feel of older sterling issues. The 1954 florin is scarce because very few examples survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. Millions may have been minted, but like its 1953 counterpart, it was a workhorse of commerce, used heavily in shops, markets, and households across the country. The size and silver content of the florin meant that few people thought to preserve them untouched. They were far too useful in circulation. Decades later, this means collectors face a monumental challenge in locating high-grade specimens. The rarity of the 1954 florin has been recognized by numismatists for years, and its value has steadily climbed with time. Auction houses frequently highlight it alongside other post-war rarities, and competition among serious collectors can be fierce. For those building a complete set of Elizabeth II florins, this coin represents one of the most difficult hurdles, especially in mint state. Its enduring appeal lies not just in its scarcity, but also in the nostalgia it evokes. The coin reflects a period of stability and optimism in Australia, a nation forging its post-war identity, while still holding strong ties to the monarchy. For many collectors, the 1954 florin embodies both the charm of silver coinage and the heritage of mid-century Australia. Today, the 1954 florin commands around $69,000 in the highest grades, confirming its place as one of the most valuable and cherished silver coins of the Elizabeth II series. Like the 1953 issue, it is not only a collector's treasure but also a timeless reminder of Australia's monetary and cultural history. Next up, the 1955 florin in the highest grades holds a market value of around $76,000, making it one of the most valuable and sought-after mid-20th century Australian silver coins. Though at first glance it may look like an ordinary florin from the Elizabeth II era, this coin is anything but ordinary when it comes to rarity and collector demand. Minted in relatively low numbers and released at a time when florins were a backbone of Australian commerce, the 1955 issue has become extremely difficult to locate in pristine condition, and this scarcity is the very reason behind its impressive market value today. The obverse of the 1955 florin carries the Mary Gillick Portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, the same effigy introduced in 1953 following her coronation. Her youthful image is iconic, reflecting the optimism and energy of the early years of her reign. The reverse continues the classic Australian coat of arms design, featuring the kangaroo and emu supporting the shield, surmounted by a star. This design had appeared on florins for decades, tying together tradition and continuity with the new Elizabethan era. The rarity of this coin comes not from a small mintage alone, but from the survival rate of high-quality examples. Florins of the 1950s were heavily used in day-to-day transactions. They were large silver coins, useful in every kind of purchase, from groceries to public transport fares, and because of this, very few were preserved in untouched mint state condition. The majority of surviving 1955 florins show signs of circulation, including scratches, edge wear, and dullness from handling. Collectors prize the 1955 florin not only for its scarcity, but also for its place in Australian history. By the mid-1950s, Australia was moving toward an era of modernisation, yet the silver florin remained a tangible connection to older monetary traditions, dating back to the early 20th century. The 1955 issue also stands out as one of the more difficult Elizabeth II florins to obtain in gem, uncirculated condition, which explains why collectors compete so fiercely for top examples when they appear at auction. Over the years, this coin's value has consistently climbed as more people recognize its rarity. Auction results have shown steady increases, especially for coins graded at the highest levels, where collectors are willing to pay a premium for perfection. The 1955 florin, with its current high-grade market value of $76,000, represents a perfect combination of history, rarity, and enduring collector demand. Next up, the 1922-21 overdate, 3p in top-grade condition, is valued at around 260 al, making it one of the most extraordinary and valuable rarities in Australian numismatics. This coin is a prime example of a minting error that transformed an otherwise ordinary small silver coin into a legendary piece of numismatic history. Known as an overdate, the coin features the date 1922 struck over a 1921 die, creating a visible layering of numbers that distinguishes it from regular issues. It is precisely this anomaly that makes the 1922-21 overdate 3p a coin of immense interest and value. To understand its significance, one must first consider the historical context. The early 1920s were a turbulent period for Australia's coinage. Following World War I, resources were stretched, and the Royal Mint in London supplied many of the dies used to strike Australian coins. In this case, a die intended for 1921 was repurposed and altered to show the new year, 1922. Rather than being discarded, the die was simply modified, a cost-saving practice at the time. However, the re-engraving was not precise enough to conceal the original digits, leaving traces of the underlying 1 beneath the new 2. The design of the coin itself remains unchanged from regular issues of the era. On the obverse, it features the portrait of King George V, designed by Sir Bertram McKennell, a classic image that graced Australian coins for 2 decades. On the reverse, the simple yet distinctive design of the Australian 3p appears, the denomination flanked by sheaves of wheat, surmounted by a crown and the date below. What makes this coin special is not its artistry, but the story it carries, an error born from practical necessity that went unnoticed by most people at the time. For decades, these overdates circulated quietly in everyday commerce. They were small coins, often overlooked or spent without a second thought. It wasn't until collectors began examining older issues more carefully that the significance of the 1922-21 overdate 3p was recognized. By then, very few examples remained in good condition. Most had been worn down through years of circulation, making high-grade specimens incredibly rare. Today, the 1922-21 overdate 3p is a centerpiece of Australian numismatics. Collectors consider it one of the holy grails of the series, comparable in significance to the famed 1930 penny. Its rarity, combined with the intrigue of its era, ensures that it commands enormous sums at auction. Stories abound of collectors spending decades searching for one, with only a handful of lucky individuals able to secure an example. When pristine specimens come to market, they ignite fierce bidding wars. The value has climbed steadily over time, with recent sales confirming prices in the range of $260,000. For the finest known examples, this extraordinary figure demonstrates how a tiny threepence coin, born of necessity and error, has achieved legendary status in the world of Australian coin collecting. The 1922-21 overdate threepence, worth $260,000 today, stands as a true testament to how history, rarity, and chance can transform even the smallest coin into one of the greatest treasures.